Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the augmented scale. It is such a cool sound and creates a really amazing effect when you use it. So let's jump right in. Alright, so first off, what is the augmented scale? The augmented scale is a really interesting scale built sequentially off of the pattern of a minor third and a half step. So it's a minor third, half step, minor third, half step, minor third, half step, and then we're back at the root again. So here's what it sounds like from B flat. And today I'm going to play all these exercises from B flat concert. So if you're on tenor or trumpet, it's going to be C. So that's the augmented scale. Next, where do we use it? Okay, so first off, don't believe everything you read on the internet, but you can trust me, I promise. I was browsing through some articles about where to use the augmented scale out of curiosity, and I found some false information. So the main place that you want to use the augmented scale is going to be a major chord. The reason for that is it outlines the major 7 very clearly. So you wouldn't want to use it on a dominant chord, and that's what I found online that is just false. It simply clashes. So first, let's hear what it sounds like on a few basic chords. On a major chord, it's going to sound like this. On a dominant chord, it ends up clashing. It's going to sound like this. Now on a minor chord, it can work depending on how you use it. We'll get to that in a second, but it's going to sound like this. Okay, so that's how the scale sounds on just stock major 7, dominant 7, minor 7. But another place that you could use it is going to be on a sharp 5 major chord. That's going to be the most precise place to use it, most accurate place to use it. You're not going to want to use it on a sharp 5 dominant chord, however, because there it's going to clash. The augmented scale does not outline the dominant 7 in a way that really makes it sound harmonious. So on the major 7 sharp 5 chord, it's going to sound like this. On the dominant 7 sharp 5 chord, not quite going to work. It's going to sound like this. So on a dominant 7 sharp 5 chord, the scale that you would use would be a Mixolydian flat 6 scale or a whole tone scale. And if you want a master reference of all the scales you ever need to know in jazz and some exercises for them, you can check out my PDF Scales for Jazz Improvisation. However, today what we're going to do is focus deeply on the augmented scale because it is such a cool scale and such a cool effect. So as we're finding, we can use it on a major chord, sometimes on a minor chord, and we can use it on a major 7 sharp 5 chord. But in general, we can just use it anytime we want on a major chord or a major 2-5-1 or any functional harmony that is resolving to major. It's going to sound really cool as an effect there. So that's why it's such a useful scale. It's not just major chords. It's if you have a major 2-5-1 or a major 3-6-2-5-1 or anything again that is functional harmony in major resolving to major, you can just use this scale as an effect. So it can be really cool. Now the exercises that we're going to go through today, they're all going to be from a PDF, 20 exercises for augmented scale technique. This is going to be a great PDF. We're going to write everything in all 12 keys. Now the augmented scale, it's worth noting, does technically overlap, so there's only 4 different unique scales. And what I mean by that is that although there are still 12 roots that you can play an augmented scale from, the C augmented scale, for instance, is going to be the same exact notes as the E augmented scale, just starting from a different note. However, still, it's really useful to learn all these exercises from each root. There are still 12 roots to learn each exercise from, so it's really useful to have it in all 12 keys. Now, all these exercises you're going to hear are going to sound super hip. Some of them in particular are so cool sounding, you could really just use them as a lick. So this stuff is going to be really useful to check out. Again, we're going to go through 5 exercises today. But if you want to check out all 20, just check out the PDF at jazzlessonvideos.com/PDF-packages. All right, so before we go on to the exercises, just one last thing. I mentioned that we would talk about how the augmented scale can work on a minor chord. So essentially what you want to do when you're using the augmented scale on a minor chord is you want to focus just a little bit more on that minor third. So if we're in B flat minor, you want to focus a little bit more on the concert D flat as being kind of a direction that you're landing on. So as opposed to landing more on the major third, you're going to land more on the minor third. You can still use the major third, it'll be a really cool effect, but you're going to focus on the minor third being a more central point. And then it's going to end up being a really cool effect. We're not going to have the minor 7 in the scale, we're going to have the major 7, so it's going to give it a more of a melodic minor type of feel. So again, it's not totally precise, but it ends up creating a really cool kind of alternative effect. Sounds like this if you're improvising on it. Okay, so let's jump into these 5 exercises. Again, the PDF has 20, but we're going to show you 5 from this PDF so you can get a cool sampling of these exercises. So the exercises, they're grouped into a few different sections. One is going to be the diatonic scale exercises. So that's going to be taking unique shapes, not just running up and down the scale, but taking unique shapes to make a really cool effect and get you much more flexible with the scale. Then there's going to be the triadic section. So there are 2 different ways that you can think about the augmented scale in terms of making triadic effects from it. So speaking in B flat, you can think about it as being B flat, D, and G flat triads stacked into a scale. Or you can also think of it as being B flat and D flat augmented triads stacked into a scale. So those are the 2 ways to think about it, which can be kind of hit. Now the last section is going to be using chromaticism with the augmented scale, which is particularly hard with the augmented scale because of the way it's structured with that pattern of the minor third leaps. But you can still do it, ends up sounding super cool and creating really cool effects when you're adding chromaticism into it. We don't want to just be able to play the scale up and down. We want to really be able to get fluid with it and add chromaticism into it. So that's going to really make it effective. Once you get to that level, that's when you're really going to be able to shred through this stuff. All right, so the first exercise we're going to do is going to be one of the diatonic shapes. This one's going to be real simple. We're just going to step up a few degrees and step down a couple degrees and then go back to that original note. Then we stack that shape moving up each degree of the scale. So it's going to sound like this. And now descending. All right, so now let's jump into a couple triadic exercises. So again, there are 2 ways of thinking about stacking triads in order to get an augmented scale. One way is that you can do the B flat augmented triad and the D flat augmented triad. Now we're going to essentially just step up 1, 3, 5, and then back down to 3. And then we're going to build those augmented triads up from each degree, connecting within each other using tight voice leading in order to create this exercise. It's going to sound like this. And now descending. All right, so now the other way of thinking of it triadically, again, we talked about this for a second earlier, but you can think about 3 different major triads. So you're going to think about B flat major, D major, and G flat major. And so we're going to stack that together. So what we're going to do on this exercise is we're going to arpeggiate up 1, 3, 5, 1. Then we're going to voice lead up to the closest degree to connect to our next triad. And we're going to go down and we're going to continue that process. So it's going to sound like this. Then descending. All right, so now let's check out 2 from the chromatic section. This section is going to sound super hip. For this first one, what we're going to do is we're going to operate triadically, just using the B flat augmented triad. And then we're going to build up each degree. We're going to have a triadic shape and then an enclosure shape because it wraps around the note. And so we're going to build up each degree of the triad in the first half, and in the second half, we're going to do the enclosure that's going to bring us into the next note of the triad. So it's going to sound like this. Then descending, we'll turn the shape around. And now for this last exercise, we're going to do another chromatic shape, and this is going to take two of the augmented triads. We're going to think about it like we were talking about before, where we've got the B flat augmented triad and the D flat augmented triad. And we're going to do that same idea that we just did, except we're going to be moving chromatically into the next type of augmented triad. So we're going to be going back and forth, but still kind of using a similar idea, with the first half of the bar being the triad and then the second half of the bar being chromatic. So this is going to sound like this. All right, now for the descending shape on this one, the chromaticism is going to work ascending. So it'll sound like this. All right, cool. Thanks for checking this out, guys. Make sure to check out that PDF digital download on jazzlessonvideos.com so you can check out all the exercises and hit the shed. Make sure to check out my website, as always, for tour dates so I can see you guys out on the road. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.